I didn't realize I was living someone else's backup life until a random Tuesday night made everything click slowly, painfully, like a lock turning after years of forcing the wrong key. It wasn't a dramatic night. No shouting, no confrontation, no suspicious phone buzzing at midnight. It was quiet, almost boring, which somehow made what I discovered feel even worse. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the TV on, but muted, both of us scrolling. That alone wasn't unusual. After 3 years together, silence had become comfortable, or at least I thought it had. She laughed softly at something on her phone, the kind of laugh that slips out when you forget someone else is in the room. It wasn't meant for me. I knew that instantly. I asked what was funny. She said, "Nothing, just something stupid," and turned her phone face down. That was the moment. Not because of the phone, not because of the laugh, but because I felt something heavy drop in my chest, like my body already knew the truth before my brain was ready to catch up. I didn't push. I never pushed. That was part of the problem, though I wouldn't understand that until much later. We met when I wasn't looking for anything serious. I just moved cities, new job, new apartment, new routine. She worked in the same building, but a different apartment. We started talking in the elevator. Small talk that turned into shared coffee breaks, then lunches, then evenings that stretched longer than planned. She used to tell me I made her feel safe. I believed that was love. When she moved in after a year, it felt natural. No big discussion, no dramatic decision. Her lease ended, my place had space. We joked that we were accidentally domestic. I paid most of the rent because I made more. I didn't mind. I cooked more often because I liked it. I listened when she vented about work, about her parents, about how she always felt like she was behind in life. I told her she wasn't. I meant it. She said she wanted a future, but she said it softly, like she was afraid of saying it too loud. I thought that was caution. Now I know it was hesitation. The first crack showed up disguised as practicality. She didn't want joint accounts. Said it was smarter to keep finances separate. She didn't want to put her name on the lease. Said it made things complicated. She didn't want to talk timelines about marriage or kids. Said she hated pressure. I told myself love didn't need paperwork. Then came the maybe someday phrases. Not no, never no, just maybe someday. Always floating just far enough away that I couldn't grab it. I started noticing patterns I couldn't explain. She was very particular about her phone. Not secretive in an obvious way, just controlled. Notifications off. Screen always angled away. Password changed more often than seemed necessary. If I walked into a room while she was texting, she'd lock it instinctively, then relax when she saw it was me. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made my stomach tighten. Still, I said nothing. The backup life doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in fragments. Like the way she talked about the future using if instead of when. Like how she'd say my place when talking to friends, even though she lived with me. Like how she never posted photos of us, not even casual ones. I don't like putting my relationship online, she said. I respected that. I even admired it. I didn't realize she was curating availability. The truth started to surface through something small and stupid. She asked me to help her update her resume. Said she was applying for a new role, maybe even in another city. I felt a flash of anxiety, but hid it. I asked if that meant we'd move together. She shrugged. We'll see. While she went to shower, her laptop stayed open on the table. I wasn't snooping. I swear that matters to me. Even now, a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. Not a message preview, just a calendar reminder. Dinner, 7 p.m. D. That was it. No last name. No context. My heart started beating faster for no logical reason. People have dinners. Friends exist. Co-workers exist. I told myself to calm down, but my hands were already on the keyboard. I didn't open messages. I didn't dig through files. I opened the calendar. What I saw made the room feel smaller. There were events stretching back months. Always on Tuesdays. Always in the evening. Sometimes labeled dinner. Sometimes catch up. Sometimes just the letter D. Sometimes, disturbingly, labeled future talk. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen, my brain desperately trying to create an innocent explanation. Then I saw one entry from 6 months ago. Decide. That was the word. Just that. Decide what? I heard the shower turn off. Panic flooded me. I closed the laptop and stood up like I'd been caught doing something wrong, even though I was the one being lied to. Dinner that night was quiet. She picked at her food. I watched her chew, smile politely, exist like everything was normal. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked casually, "Who's D?" She paused, just for a second, but it was enough. "A friend," she said, too quickly. "What kind of friend?" "An old one." I nodded. "How old?" Her eyes flicked to mine. "Why are you asking?" That was the moment I knew. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. She didn't laugh. She didn't tease me for being paranoid. She didn't ask what was wrong. She went defensive. "I saw your calendar," I said quietly. The silence that followed was heavy, crushing. She stared at her plate like it might save her. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that," she said. "Find out what?" The words spilled out slowly, like she was choosing them carefully to minimize damage. Dee was someone she dated before me, someone she loved deeply, someone who had moved away for work years ago, someone who came back in her life unexpectedly. She said she didn't plan it. She said it just happened. She said she never cheated. I asked her why the dinners were always on Tuesdays. She swallowed. "That's when he's in town." I asked her what future talk meant. She closed her eyes. We talked about what life would look like if things were different. Different how? If I wasn't with you. There it was. I felt something inside me crack open, slow and silent. Not rage. Not even sadness at first. Just a hollow realization. I wasn't the main plan. I was the safe option, the stable option, the life she lived while she waited to see if the other one would become possible again. I asked her why she stayed with me. She said, "I didn't want to lose you unless I was sure." Sure of what? That he'd choose her, that his job would work out, that the timing would finally be right. I laughed then, not because it was funny, because the absurdity of it all was too much to hold inside. "You were deciding between lives," I said, "and you let me believe I was the only one." She cried. She apologized. She said she cared about me. She said I made her feel grounded. She said she didn't mean to hurt me. None of that mattered anymore. What mattered was the sudden clarity. Every hesitation, every delay, every maybe someday, every wall she kept just high enough that I couldn't fully step into her future. I wasn't being cautious. I was being parked. I asked her to leave that night. Not dramatically, calmly, like someone finally putting down something heavy they didn't realize they'd been carrying. She packed a bag, stood at the door, asked if we could talk later. I said no. When the door closed, the apartment felt different. Quieter, lighter, emptier, all at once. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, replaying every memory through a new lens. That's when the worst thought hit me. If I hadn't seen that calendar, how long would I have lived someone else's backup life without ever knowing? And how many people do exactly that? Every day, convinced they're building something real, while someone else is quietly deciding whether they're worth choosing. The morning after she left, I woke up before my alarm, heart racing, reaching instinctively to the empty side of the bed like my body hadn't gotten the memo yet. For a few seconds, I almost convinced myself it had all been a bad dream. The calendar, the dinners, the word decide. It felt unreal in the light of morning, like something my mind had exaggerated in the dark. Then I saw her hair tie still wrapped around the lamp. Reality settled in slowly, heavily. I didn't cry right away. That surprised me. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I'd dismissed before. The time she seemed distracted, the way she'd tense up whenever I talked about long-term plans, the subtle relief on her face whenever a serious conversation ended without resolution. I'd thought love was patient. Turns out, I was just being convenient. I went through the day on autopilot. Showered, dressed, ate cereal that tasted like nothing. At work, people talked at me, and and I nodded at the right moments, but everything felt distant, like I was underwater. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Her name. I stared at it until it stopped. 5 minutes later, another message. Then another. Apologies. Explanations. Long paragraphs about confusion, timing, fear. She said she never meant to hurt me. She said I was important to her. She said she didn't know how to let go of the past without losing the present. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because I finally understood something important. If I answered, I'd be stepping back into the role I'd played all along, the one who waits. That evening, I packed up her things neatly. No drama. Just methodical. Clothes folded. Shoes paired. Books stacked. I left the box by the door like a quiet boundary. When she came to pick it up, she looked smaller somehow. Less certain. She tried to make eye contact. I kept my voice calm. She asked if there was any chance we could fix things. I asked her a question I should have asked long ago. Did you ever choose me when he was an option? She didn't answer. That silence was my closure. After she left for the last time, the real work began. Not the breakup recovery stuff you see online. Not dramatic glow-ups or revenge fantasies. Just a quiet, uncomfortable process of rebuilding trust in my own judgment. Because the hardest part wasn't losing her. It was realizing how many times I'd ignore my own instincts because I didn't want to seem needy. How often I convinced myself that wanting clarity was the same as being controlling. How easily I'd accepted uncertainty as the price of love. Friends started asking what happened. I gave a simple version. Most of them said the same thing. I always thought something fell off. That stung more than I expected. I started noticing patterns in other people's relationships too. The ones who never post. The ones who keep their options open just in case. The ones who avoid defining things while enjoying all the benefits of commitment. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I was angry at the situation, at the unspoken rules we let slide because we're afraid of asking for too much. A month later, I ran into D by accident. I recognized him immediately, though I'd never seen him before. There was a familiarity in his face, like a character you've heard described so many times they start to feel real. He looked surprised, awkward. He told me he hadn't known she was still living with me when they started talking again. Said she told him we were basically over. I believed him. That didn't make it better. It just confirmed what I already knew. When people are undecided, they don't just hurt one person. They hurt everyone orbiting their indecision. He asked if I hated him. I said no, because hating him would mean he mattered more than the lesson. The lesson was simple, brutal, and freeing. If someone is unsure about choosing you, that's your answer. You don't audition for a role in your own relationship. You don't compete with a ghost. You don't build a future with someone who keeps one foot in the past. Months passed. Life didn't magically improve, but it got clearer, quieter, more honest. I started dating again, slowly, carefully. And this time, I asked questions early. Not aggressively, not desperately, just honestly. What do you want? What are you building? Are you available fully? Some people walked away. That used to scare me. Now it felt like relief. Because the right people don't hesitate when they choose you. They don't need calendars labeled decide. They don't keep backup lives. They don't ask you to wait while they figure out whether you're worth committing to. They show up. And if they don't, you walk away before you disappear into someone else's maybe. If you've ever felt like you were trying harder than the person you were with, if you've ever been told to be patient while your needs stayed unmet, if you've ever wondered whether you were asking for too much or just asking the wrong person, I want to know what you think. Was I right to walk away when I did? Or should I have fought harder for what we had? And if this story made you reflect on your own experiences, staying connected here really helps, because these conversations don't end when the story does. The first sign something was wrong wasn't a message, or a lie, or even a fight. It was the way she smiled at her phone and then locked it the second I walked into the room. Not panicked, not guilty looking, just practiced. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. We'd been together long enough that routine had replaced sparks, and maybe my brain was just hunting for drama where none existed. That's what people do when life gets quiet. They invent storms. But this wasn't quiet. It was hollow. We lived together, shared groceries, split rent, argued about dishes and what to watch at night. From the outside, we looked settled, stable, the kind of couple friends used as a reference point. Inside the apartment, though, it felt like I was slowly being edited out. She'd started showering later than usual, always after I fell asleep. Her work hours stretched mysteriously. Conversations that used to wander now ended quickly, like she was racing towards something else. I remember one night clearly. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, some show playing neither of us cared about. I reached for her hand out of habit. She flinched, not dramatically, just enough. She covered it by shifting her weight, pretending to adjust her position. But the moment stuck to me. My chest tightened in a way I couldn't explain. You don't flinch from someone you're comfortable with. After that, I started noticing patterns. Small things. Repeated things. Her phone was always face down now. She took calls on the balcony even when it was cold. She laughed differently when she texted. Lighter. Freer. Like she was visiting another version of herself I wasn't invited to meet. I asked her, gently, if everything was okay. She said yes too quickly. I asked if work was stressing her out. She said no, smiled, kissed my cheek, and asked what I wanted for dinner. That's when I realized something important. She wasn't lying badly. She was lying efficiently. Weeks passed like that. Me collecting unease. Her collecting distance. Then came the night that broke the illusion. She forgot her tablet at home. That never happened. Her tablet was practically glued to her. She used it for work, for notes, for everything. But that evening, she rushed out the door, late for something she didn't explain, and left it charging on the kitchen counter. I didn't touch it at first. I swear that's true. I stood there staring at it like it might explode if I got too close. I wasn't trying to spy. I was trying to reassure myself. Eventually, curiosity won. Or fear. Or instinct. I'm still not sure which. I picked it up. The screen lit up instantly. No pascode. She'd never felt the need to lock it before. A notification banner slid down before I even had time to second-guess myself. A name I didn't recognize. A message preview I couldn't ignore. I can't stop thinking about last night. My stomach dropped. I sat down slowly, like my body knew it was about to need support. My hands shook as I opened the app, half hoping it would crash, half hoping I'd misread everything. I hadn't. What I found wasn't one conversation. It was a whole life. Messages stretching back months. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Plans that didn't include me. Complaints about how stuck she felt. How she wished things were simpler. How she felt more like herself with him. Pictures too. Nothing explicit. That almost made it worse. Smiles. Cafes. Reflections in windows. Moments that looked intimate not because of what they showed, but because of what they meant. She wasn't just cheating. She was building something parallel. I closed the tablet and sat there in silence, listening to the hum of the fridge, the distant traffic outside, the normal sounds of a life that suddenly felt fake. I didn't confront her that night, not because I was scared, but because I needed to understand the shape of the truth before I touched it. When she came home, she was cheerful, relaxed. She kissed me hello like nothing had happened, asked if I wanted dessert. I watched her move through the apartment like a guest who knew where everything was kept. Later, lying in bed beside her, I stared at the ceiling while she slept easily, one arm draped across my chest like a claim. That's when it hit me. She wasn't conflicted. She was comfortable. Comfortable lying. Comfortable compartmentalizing. Comfortable letting me play the role of partner while someone else played the role of escape. The next morning, she woke up early, dressed quietly, and said she had a long day ahead. I nodded, smiled, told her to have a good one. As soon as the door closed, I exhaled for the first time in weeks. I didn't cry. Not yet. I opened my laptop and started writing everything down. Dates, names, details. Not for revenge. For clarity. Because I knew one thing for sure. When I finally spoke to her, I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. And I wasn't going to let myself be the one apologizing for noticing the truth. I didn't confront her immediately. That's the part people never understand when I tell this story later. They always ask, how did you not lose your mind? Or why didn't you kick her out that same day? The truth is simpler and uglier. I wanted to see how far she'd go. Once you see someone clearly for the first time, you stop reacting emotionally and start observing. It's like watching a magic trick after you've already learned how it works. The wonder is gone, but the technique becomes fascinating. So I watched. I watched her wake up and make coffee like nothing had changed. I watched her complain about traffic, about coworkers, about little things that suddenly felt rehearsed. I watched her text him while sitting 2 feet away from me, angling her phone just enough so I couldn't see the screen. And I watched myself change. I stopped asking questions, stopped initiating conversations, stopped reaching for her at night, not out of spite, but because my body refused to fake intimacy with someone who was emotionally somewhere else. She noticed. Of course she did. One night, about a week after I found the messages, she asked, "Are you mad at me?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The same face I'd memorized over years. The same voice that used to calm me. The same eyes that were now measuring my reaction. "No," I said. "What?" She shrugged, pretending not to care. "You've just been distant." The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded. "Just tired." She accepted that answer immediately. That's when I knew she didn't want honesty. She wanted stability. She wanted the apartment, the routine, the safety net. Whatever she had with him was excitement, not structure. I was the structure. That realization hurt more than the cheating itself. A few days later, I did something I'm not proud of, but I don't regret. I checked her tablet again. The tone of the messages had shifted. Less fantasy, more logistics. Complaints about me, about how I was off lately, about how she felt guilty but also trapped, about how she didn't know how to end things cleanly. He suggested she talk to me. She replied, "I will. I just need time. Time. Time to keep lying. Time to prepare an exit. Time to soften the narrative so I'd look like the problem." That was the moment I decided I wouldn't give her that luxury. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't storm out. I planned. I quietly secured my finances. Took screenshots of everything. Not for revenge, but so I couldn't be gaslit later. I lined up a temporary place to stay with a friend without telling her why. Then I waited for the right moment. It came on a random Tuesday night. She came home late, dropped her bag by the door, and sighed like someone exhausted from performing all day. She sat next to me on the couch, leaned her head on my shoulder, and said, "We need to talk." There it was. I turned to her calmly. "Okay." She launched into it carefully, like she practiced. How she'd been feeling confused. How she loved me, but wasn't in love. How she felt we'd grown apart. How none of this was anyone's fault. She didn't mention him. Not once. When she finished, she waited for my reaction. Probably expected tears, anger, bargaining. Instead, I asked one question. "How long has it been?" Her eyes flicked away for half a second. "Been what?" "You tell me." Silence stretched between us. Thick, uncomfortable. Finally, she said quietly, "There's no one else." I nodded slowly. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and placed it face up on the coffee table. On the screen was a screenshot. Her message. His name. The timestamp. Her face drained of color so fast, it was almost impressive. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "You went through my things?" I smiled. Not kindly. "You lied to my face just now," I said. "And that's what you're worried about?" She cried then. Real tears. Apologies tumbling over each other. She said it just happened. Said she didn't mean for it to go that far. Said she was scared to hurt me. I listened. Let her talk. Let her dig. When she finally stopped, I stood up. "I'm not here to negotiate," I said. "I just wanted to hear how you'd explain it." She reached for me. I stepped back. Already packed. I added, "I'll be out tonight." Her shock turned to panic. "You can't just leave. We need to figure this out." I shook my head. "You already figured it out. You just didn't tell me." I left with a backpack and a comm I didn't recognize. The aftermath was quiet. No dramatic breakup scene. No public meltdown. Just distance. She moved out a month later. Here's the part that surprised me. 3 months after everything ended, I got a message from him. Not to apologize. To ask me something. He said she'd started acting distant with him. That she lied about small things. That he felt like he never fully knew where he stood. You want to know if she'd done that with me too. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Yes. That was all I sent. I blocked him after. Because some lessons aren't meant to be taught. Just witnessed. Looking back, I don't feel angry anymore. I feel clarity. She didn't cheat because I failed. She cheated because she wanted options without consequences. And when those consequences finally arrived, she didn't know how to live with them. If you made it this far, tell me honestly in the comments. Do you think emotional cheating is worse than physical cheating, or are they the same? And if stories like this hit close to home, subscribe, like, and share your thoughts. The first sign something was wrong wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a message or a secret call or someone acting suspicious. It was silence, not the peaceful kind. The kind that creeps in slowly and settles into the corners of a relationship until you don't notice it anymore. The kind where conversations turn into updates instead of connections. Where "how was your day" becomes a formality instead of curiosity. We'd been married for 6 years. No kids yet. Stable jobs. A quiet life that looked perfect from the outside. People used to tell us we were lucky, that we were solid, that we'd made it past the hard part. I believe that too. She stopped arguing first. That should have scared me, but it didn't. I took it as maturity. Growth. I thought we'd finally reached that stage where we didn't need to fight over stupid things. What I didn't realize was that she wasn't calm. She was done. It started with small changes. She rearranged the living room while I was at work. Threw away old photos without asking. Replaced our shared calendar with her own planner. While I joked about it, she smiled and said, "I just needed a reset." That word stuck with me. Reset. Like our life was a device that needed restarting. The real shift came when she stopped sharing her thoughts. Not feelings, thoughts. Opinions. Reactions. She used to tell me everything. Random ideas, half-formed plans, stupid observations about strangers at the grocery store. Suddenly, she kept those things to herself. If I asked what she was thinking, she'd say, nothing. If I asked how she felt, she'd say, fine. And I let it slide, because pushing felt worse than pretending. One night, I came home early and found her sitting at the dining table with a stack of papers spread out neatly in front of her. She jumped when she saw me, quickly gathering them into a folder. "What's that?" I asked. "Work stuff," she said too quickly. I didn't press. I should have. Later that night, while she was asleep, I noticed her phone light up on the nightstand. No name, just a notification preview that said, "We need to talk about next steps." My stomach tightened, but my brain jumped to the safest conclusion. Work. It had to be work. I turned over and forced myself to sleep. Over the next few weeks, she became efficient. That's the only word that fits. She cooked meals that were pre-portioned, did laundry on a strict schedule, organized the house like she was preparing it for inspection. She spoke kindly, but distantly, like a polite stranger sharing a space. One evening, she sat across from me and asked, "If you could live anywhere, where would you go?" It seemed random, but something about her tone made me pause. "I don't know," I said. "What?" She shrugged. "Just curious." Then she added, casually, "Do you think people outgrow each other?" That's when the silence finally screamed. I laughed nervously. "What kind of question is that?" She smiled again. Always that calm smile. Just thinking out loud. But she wasn't thinking out loud. She was rehearsing. A few days later, I found a sticky note on the fridge with a list written in her handwriting. Utilities, bank, storage, mail forwarding. No explanation. I stared at it for a long time, feeling like I was reading someone else's life plans. When I asked her about it that night, she didn't deny anything. She didn't explain either. "I think we need space," she said. Not angrily, not sadly, like she was suggesting a practical solution. My chest tightened. Space from what? From each other, she replied gently. From this version of us. I asked her if there was someone else. She said no. I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the way she didn't look me in the eye. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified. Every breath she took felt distant, foreign. The next morning, she left early. Said she had an appointment. When she forgot her laptop on the kitchen counter, something in me snapped. Not in anger, but in instinct. Like my body knew something my mind was still refusing to accept. I opened it. No password. The desktop was clean. Almost too clean. One folder sat in the corner, labeled simply, Plans. Inside were documents I wasn't meant to see. Budgets. Apartment listings. A resignation draft letter. A timeline broken down by weeks. Even a checklist titled Conversation Points. My name appeared exactly once, under a section labeled Emotional Considerations. I felt cold. There was no affair, no secret lover, no dramatic betrayal that movies prepare you for. This was something quieter. She had planned her exit from my life with the same care people use to plan a move across the country. I closed the laptop and sat there in the silence she'd been practicing for months. When she came home that evening, she kissed my cheek like always. I didn't react. She noticed immediately. What's wrong? She asked. I looked at her, at the person I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world, and realized something terrifying. She hadn't just fallen out of love with me. She had already built a future where I didn't exist, and she hadn't bothered to tell me. The worst part wasn't that she was leaving. It was realizing I'd been living in the aftermath before the ending had even arrived. She didn't deny it when I told her I'd seen the folder. That was the part that finally broke something inside me. No excuses, no panique, no scrambling to explain. She just sat down slowly, like she'd been expecting this moment for weeks, maybe months. I was going to tell you, she said. That sentence is a lie dressed up as comfort. It always is. I asked her when. She looked at the wall behind me instead of my face and said, after everything was ready. Ready for who? I wanted to scream. Ready for what? Ready to erase me without friction. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I surprised myself by how calm I sounded when I asked. So, I'm just another task on your checklist? She flinched then, just a little, like the truth had nicked her. That's not fair, she said softly, but it was precise. She explained it like a presentation, like she was walking me through a project she'd spent months refining. She talked about feeling stuck, about needing to rediscover herself, about how the relationship had become functional but hollow. Every word landed wrong, not because they were cruel, but because they were rehearsed. I realized then that this wasn't a conversation. It was a closing statement. I asked her why she stayed if she'd already decided to leave. She said, because I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed. I couldn't stop myself. It came out sharp and ugly. You didn't want to hurt me. I said, so you let me live in a lie? She finally looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were wet but steady. I thought if I made it clean, it would be easier. Clean. Like deleting a file. That night, she slept on the couch. Not because we agreed to it, but because neither of us knew how to exist in the same bed anymore. The apartment felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in to listen. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of the bedroom, surrounded by pieces of a life that suddenly felt staged. The framed photos, the shared furniture, the souvenirs from trips we'd taken while she was apparently drafting her escape. I kept replaying moments from the past year, searching for cracks I'd missed. Every time she'd smiled through discomfort. Every time she'd said, it's fine, when it clearly wasn't. Every time I'd chosen comfort over curiosity. By morning, something else settled in. Anger. Not explosive anger. Focused anger. She left for work like nothing had changed. Packed her lunch. Said she'd be late. Asked if I needed anything from the store. I nodded and said no. Then I opened the laptop again. I read everything. Every document. Every version of the plan. She'd been meticulous. She had backups. Notes about timing conversations with my work schedule so I'd have support. Even suggestions from articles about how to leave a marriage with minimal emotional damage. What struck me most was a line she'd written to herself. Do not back out. Comfort is not love. I closed the laptop and felt something go quiet inside my chest. That was the moment I stopped trying to save us. I didn't confront her again. Not right away. Instead, I started observing, noticing details I'd ignored before. She was already halfway gone. She took personal items to work to declutter. She stopped using our joint account for anything except bills. She'd rerouted her mail. I found a storage unit key in her bag. She wasn't waiting to leave. She was waiting for me to catch up, so I decided to do something she hadn't planned for. I prepared my own exit. I didn't tell her. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I mirrored her calm with my own. I met with a lawyer. Quietly. Efficiently. Learned things I wish I'd never needed to know. I gathered documents. Took photos. Made copies. I opened a separate account and moved only what I was entitled to. I packed my personal things slowly, deliberately, so I wouldn't forget anything important. I started sleeping better than I had in months. She noticed the change. You seem distant, she said one night. I almost laughed again. Just thinking, I replied. She nodded like she understood. Like distance was something she recognized now. The day she finally decided to have the talk, she set the table nicely. Dia Condor made my favorite meal. I could almost admire the symmetry. She started with, "This is really hard for me." I let her finish. I let her say all the things she practiced. About growth. About needing space. About loving me, but not being in love anymore. When she finally asked if I wanted to say anything, I slid an envelope across the table. She frowned and opened it. Her hand shook as she read. I'd filed first. I'd secured my share of assets. I'd arranged a temporary place to stay. I'd even included a copy of the same checklist she'd written, with my own notes added. Her face crumpled in a way I hadn't seen in months. "You planned this?" she whispered. I looked at her and said, "I adapted." That was the last real conversation we ever had. I moved out the next day while she was at work. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. She knew. In the weeks that followed, people asked me what happened. Friends, family, co-workers. I didn't give them a dramatic story. I just said the truth. She left long before she walked out. What surprised me most wasn't the loss. It was the relief. Without the quiet tension, without the performance, I could finally breathe. I started noticing things about myself again. Things I'd muted to keep the peace. I realized how often I'd accepted less than honesty because it was easier than confrontation. Months later, she reached out. Just a message. Short. Careful. I hope you're doing well. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because closure doesn't always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from recognizing that someone showed you exactly who they were and believing them. Now I'll ask you this, and I genuinely want to know your thoughts in the comments, because people never agree on this. Was she wrong for planning her exit so carefully, or was I wrong for not seeing it sooner? And if you've ever lived through something like this, do you think quiet endings hurt more than explosive ones? If this story made you think or reminded you of someone you know, make sure you like and subscribe for more real stories like this. And tell me what side you're on in the comments.